Well, I report with sadness that former infamous caller to this radio show, Donald Moore, a.k.a. Don in Blue Springs, passed away on Veterans Day last month. I just found this out. I was going through some Facebook messages in the last 48 hours. I mean, I'm way behind on some of the messages, and I apologize. I try to get to as many as I can. But I was scrolling through some of the messages that I was getting, and I got a message from a woman who said, "Hey, Pete, I'm not sure if you saw this, but one of your old infamous callers, Don in Blue Springs, died last month, and I wanted to make sure you knew about it." And I was very grateful. I was able to confirm she knew him personally, and I found the obituary, and it says here in the obituary, in part, Donald Moore of Blue Springs died in his home on Veterans Day. He was born November 30th, 1949. Graduated from Hannibal High School in 1967. Now, Don would call in and he would debate, and I have a clip from Don from a few years ago that I'll play here momentarily. But he would call up, and it didn't matter what I was talking about on the show. I'd be talking about Royals, Chiefs, Westport, Johnson County. And he'd call in, and, John would screen him in, and he'd be screaming about something with Trump. I mean, he'd be going nuts. It was always about Trump with this guy, John.
The man was a character.
Yes.
He would call in, and I'd have some normal conversation with him. I found out he'd coach sports, so after a while, some little sports banner, and I'd call him coach every once in a while. "Hey, let me talk to Pete." I said, "All right, well, we're going to do a segment. You got a minute or two?" Yeah, I'll hang on, And then all of a sudden when he gets on the air, man, it's just dynamite.
Yes.
Boom.
He was
like,
a
wow,
caricature.
I didn't realize. I mean, he didn't scream at me on the phone as much as you got it on the air. I'm like, okay, cool. So I knew him as coach sometimes.
He was a great character for the show. And we had not heard from him, I don't know, it's been years. So I don't know if he had been dealing with some health issues, but it's been at least 2 years since we had heard from Don in Blue Springs. And his obituary goes on the note here that his education was interrupted by military service. Like all young men his age, he was subject to being drafted into the Army to fight in the Vietnam War. And that reminded me, he would always call Trump Captain Bone Spurs. Do you remember that?
Yep, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So obviously, he was someone who served the country, not happy that Trump got out of Vietnam. Goes on the note here in his obituary, after being released from active duty, spent 4 years with the Navy. He attended Northeast Missouri State in Kirksville and later University of Missouri, Columbia. He was a high school English teacher and coached several sports at Hickman High in Columbia. And then he also went to Farmington High in Farmington, Missouri. Around the time he enrolled in law school, he joined the Army Reserve, retired with the rank of military sergeant. After more than 20 years continuing his service, he was loved and respected by all soldiers and officers privileged to work with him. Upon graduating from UMKC School of Law, he practiced law at Blue Springs Law Firm, eventually becoming a partner. So it goes on the note here, and this was great at the end of his obituary. Donnie Moore, as he was usually called, was the life of the party wherever he went, always wearing a smile and spreading his infectious laugh. He did have a great laugh on the air. When we would find points of agreement, he had a great laugh. He enjoyed reading anything, mostly nonfiction, and being with friends and family, usually getting into a friendly political argument. It notes here in the obituary. He loved sports, especially baseball, and watching sports as a fan of the Missouri Tigers, the Kansas City Royals and Chiefs, and his beloved St. Louis Cardinals. He was a long-distance runner for most of his life, competing in many runs. He truly was, as his father-in-law Joe lovingly referred to him, Super Don. So Don in Blue Springs, a longtime caller. If you're a new listener since we switched to 95.7 FM, you probably don't remember Don in Blue Springs. But boy, this guy, he was a hoot. And I found a segment of a call that we had back in 2019. And here's part of what this sounded like. It was always about Trump. He was always mad at Trump for something. And here's a prime example of that. Donald Trump is...
The division is... Here's the division, Pete. We have a bunch of racist people that couldn't stand it that we had a black president for 8 years. It was a reaction to that.
Don,
they couldn't wait, and that entered Donald Trump, stirring up the race riot.
All the racists in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan suddenly showed up and voted for Trump. Is that what you're saying? Because there were millions of Americans who switched their vote from Obama to Trump. Don, don't let these facts get in the way of a good story, though. You know, I don't want to do that to you.
Here's the deal. Millions of Americans, Donald Trump lost the popular vote by almost 3 million people, okay? And the reason why Donald Trump is president, 77,000 voters across 3 states. And here's the rub. The African Americans did not get out and vote for Hillary like they did Obama. If they had, we wouldn't even be talking about Trump.
Well, you know what, Don? That's politics, though, my man. I mean, some people show up, some people don't, and that's part of how the game works. Have a great day, brother. Appreciate the call. I mean, you know, such is life. Mitt Romney thought he was going to win in a landslide. Not enough people felt compelled the day of Election Day to go out there and to vote for the guy. They weren't passionately into his candidacy. He lost. That's how politics works.
That is part of a call with Don in Blue Springs back in 2019. Does that bring back some memories for you there, John, listening to Don's voice on the air?
Oh, yeah. We've got him in one of our openers, too,
yes,
I think.
We do.
Which one is it? What If?
What If Wednesday.
Yeah, Pete, what if somebody else were on this station?
Yes.
Yep.
That's right. Well, rest in peace to Don in Blue Springs. He was an important part, I would say, of the early iteration of this show. When I was kind of finding my footing, and Don became a great foil, and we had some outstanding debates and conversations. Let's go to Wes is in Gladstone. What's up, my man?
Wow, man, you just never know. I graduated from Hickman High School. Didn't know Don was an MU fan and a Cardinal fan, as am I. Always loved listening to his takes. I never agreed with any of them, but man, just like you said, brother, rest in peace. I wish, you know what, one time I wanted you and I and Don to go out drinking in eastern Jackson County. You were going to be the designated driver, and we were going to hit every beer joint. I wish we could have done that, man. I'm sure it would have been a memorable time.
Yeah, it would have been a memorable time for you guys. I would have been in therapy for years coming out of that. But, yeah, that would have been a grand old time. Thank you, Wes. Have a great day, my friend. I appreciate that. So, yeah, Don in Blue Springs passing away, born in 1949. And I just saw this. I got this from a listener. He passed away on Veterans Day last month. And I do want to note that he was lucky to have, as the obituary notes, 2 children, which he called the best things I ever did. Daughter Megan, son Matthew, they both survive him. He is also survived by his brother Mike, his many loving sisters-in-law, and a brother-in-law, and a band of nieces, nephews, and friends. So rest in peace to Don in Blue Springs. Always enjoyed his calls, always enjoyed, because here's the thing. A lot of times the calls would end with Don laughing about something, which I always did appreciate about him. It was never personal. It was just entertainment. All right, Victor's in Parkville to wrap it up. What's up, Vic?
How you doing, Pete? I just want to piggyback on what's been said about Don. He was indeed a character, and he was very passionate. Don and I sparred on occasion, and we were diametrically opposed on almost every subject. But I guarantee you one thing that he and I had in common was a love of country. He served this nation faithfully in 2 branches of the military, and as is fitting for a patriot, he passed away on Veterans Day. I'm comforted to know that he is surely going to find a cure for TDS in heaven. Don, from one fleet sailor to another, fair winds and calm seas. Rest in peace, brother.
Well said there, Victor. Thanks for sharing that, buddy.
Here.
I appreciate it. Well done. Very nice of you. Very nice. No, and that's exactly right. I mean, Don was just one of those guys that you disagreed with him, probably, if you're a listener to this radio station, but you also wanted to get a beer with him. And that's worth something. Because in a climate where no one actually wants to interact with people on the other side, which I find sad and depressing, Don was one of those guys where you'd say, you know what? No, I'd get a beer with Don. We'd go back and forth. We'd laugh. We'd have moments where we want to kill each other, but then we'd have moments where we'd be slapping each other on the back. That's the kind of guy that he was. We have not heard from Don in, frankly, it's been a couple of years. But rest in peace. I hope his family is doing well, and we'll miss him.